Welcome back to Module 4. At this point, we're almost done. We're more than halfway through our course, Religion 3292, Politics and Religion in a Global Context. I hope you've been enjoying this. Again, if you have any questions, issues, always feel free to email me or text me, and I'll do everything I can to help you. We're halfway through, as I said, even more than halfway through, and we have 2 more weeks. Again, we're going to stay on this same theme of politicized religions, and we're going to look at politicized religions or a politicized religious tradition through a certain lens. Now, you'll notice that as we've gone through this semester, again, kind of funny saying semester and it's only 5 weeks, but we're going to be doing a semester's worth of work here. As we've gone through this course, you'll notice that I've focused on geography. And so in many regards, you can say this is a course that is looking at politicized religions through a geopolitical context. All right, that's probably too many politicals in there. But basically, that's what we're doing. And so remember, in the first week, we talked about this idea of politics and religion and some theory and propaganda and glossary and terms and so forth and so on. Hopefully to give you kind of a framework to approach these things and to give you a vocabulary to approach these topics. In the second module, we began to focus on a particular religious tradition. We focused on Sunni Islam, but not only just Sunni, but what it means to have an extreme interpretation of Sunni. And so don't forget, we've been talking about this whole idea that, especially when it comes to Islam, 95% of the population, they consider themselves moderates. Most of them would argue that Islam is a religion of peace. They would be very offended. They are very offended that Osama bin Laden would be known as the representative for Islam. And they would totally disagree with him. Well, what's going on? Is it a problem with the religion or is it a problem with the interpretation? I'll let someone else, that's out of my pay grade, I'll let someone else take care of that. But I will argue, and this is what we're focusing on this semester, and that is it comes down to interpretation. And so 95% of Muslims, Sunni, Shia, Sufi, wherever they may be, they would consider themselves as moderate. Only 4 to 5% would consider themselves as militant, and I really kind of misspeak when I say that because they don't consider themselves as militant, they consider themselves as traditional, all right? And so in many regards, and we've already talked about this, one of the differences between moderate and militant is not necessarily the religion itself or the religious text, but it's the interpretation, okay? So we looked at Sunni Islam and Saudi Arabia and Wahhabism and Egypt and the Muslim Brotherhood, and then Turkey as kind of this modern experiment with a Muslim, predominantly about 80% of the population in Turkey is Islamic, but they're also a democracy. Of course, many problems, many tensions there, but we looked at Turkey at the end to try to understand what's going on with hopefully a successful democracy and Islam. Then in Module 3, we dealt with the whole idea of Shia and the difference between Shia and Sunni, and in particular we focused again on Iran and Iraq. And we saw that in Iraq, one of the major problems there is we really have a clash of quote-unquote civilizations, but it's not necessarily Islam against Christianity or Judaism against Islam. Yeah, there's part of that, but it really is a problem even within Islam itself. And so we see this horrible Sunni-Shia split. Now, as we approach Module 4, and this week the topic that we're going to study, we're going to really shift gears. We're going to kind of leave the Middle East, but not really. We're going to talk about Judaism. And in particular, what I would term, some people are going to disagree with me on this, I'm going to term militant Judaism, or what some people would call Zionistic Judaism. Of course, Zionism, or Zion, is the name for the Mount in Jerusalem. It, in many ways, is a synonym for Jerusalem. And so Zionism, which is, that is a very modern term, goes back to the late 1800s, early 1900s, and basically it is reestablishing Israel in the Levant. It's reestablishing Israel back into what they consider their homeland. Now, if you go back, if you remember your Old Testament class that you took and the New Testament class, one of the most important dates that we learned was 70 CE. 70 CE was the fall of Jerusalem at the hands of the Romans. Eventually, the final fall will be in 73 at Masada, and the Jews will be pretty much kicked out of Jerusalem. And then especially when Hadrian comes along from 132 to 135, the Emperor Hadrian will actually make an edict that says that Jews are never allowed back into Jerusalem. He will rename Jerusalem into a Latinized name. And so in many regards, the Jews have not been back in their land, what they consider is their land, since 70 CE, maybe 135 CE. And so when the Israeli state came into being in 1948, that was quite stunning, and we're still living with the reverberations to this day. All right, so what is Zionism? Zionism is the belief that this land belonged to the Jews all along. And in 1948, there were many Jews who decided that they were going to establish the state. And it would be, for some Jews, it would be a religious state. By the way, if you think that all people, all Jews in Israel are Jewish, and by that I mean they are religious, they are traditional Jews, think again. We at King go over to do a dig every year. We work with Tel Aviv University. Most of the scholars that I work with, they're Jewish, but they're not believers. They're Jewish, but they're atheists. In many regards, and this is why some people say America needs to support Israel. Israel is the only democratic government in the Middle East. And so there will be many people who say, therefore, we need to support them. All right, we'll come back to that later. But I want you to see that we just can't be monolithic when we're describing Jews in Israel, because another surprising fact about Israel is not everybody's Jewish. You have a number of Arabs who are in Israel. So again, let's be very careful. Let's check our biases. Let's check our prejudices. And let's look at the history of Zionism. And then let's look at the establishment of the Israeli state in 1948. And then let's look at the ramifications. In many regards, what we're going to see is most Christians in America support Israel. Most Jews in America support Israel. And this has led to a huge tension between the Palestinians and the Jews. I've already talked about Osama bin Laden and why Al-Qaeda attacked America in 9/11. There are lots of issues, but one of the major issues is because America has supported Israel in oppressing the Palestinians, at least according to their view. And so all of a sudden now, America has been thrown into this religious debate. There's a famous scholar by the name of Peter Berger. He's a fabulous sociologist. He used to be at Harvard, he may still be there. But in the 60s, he said that when we move into the 21st century, religion will really no longer be an issue that we have to deal with, that in fact people are getting further and further away from religious expressions. Well, he's a great scholar, but wow, was he wrong. Now in 2015, almost every night that I watch the news, almost every day that I drive in, I'll listen to NPR. There's something about religion, and sometimes it's not just something. There are many things about religion. And so here in 2015, religion is more important than it's ever been. And so let's take a look at, again, politicized religion, and this time through the lens of Judaic Zionism.